Welcome back to Out of Home Insider and part 2 with Adam Malone, where we break down programmatic buying versus guaranteed direct. We unpack some of the jargon, discuss the differences, and while I don't know that we'll settle any debates on this one, it should serve as a primer for digital place-based out of home and the lens we view it through. And if you have a place-based network, we want to list you on the OneScreen marketplace. Visit onescreen.ai and click Get Listed to feature your company on the first free public access directory for all things out of home. That's onescreen.ai and click Get Listed. Without further ado, let's go.
Welcome, everybody, to the Out of Home Insider Show, a podcast like no other, hosted by the one and only Tim Rowe. Get ready to have some knowledge dropped on you and to be entertained, because nothing's more valuable than food for your brain. So sit back, relax, we're about to dive in as the best industry podcast is about to begin.
Adam Malone, thanks for coming back. Part 2.
Good to see you. Happy to be back.
It's great to have you back so soon. Last week, we got to talk about, the origin story, how Screenverse came to be, your background in the space. And we really wanted to have time to break this out as its own conversation, which is the debate around to be programmatic, not to be programmatic. Is programmatic the end of the AE? What is programmatic? That's not programmatic. All of those things. It's a hot button conversation. So I figured that, it would be a fun one to break down for the audience, that we could do that here today.
Absolutely. I'm excited to do it. So, I think fundamentally programmatic, as we think of it in out of home, is, first it's all digital inventory. So digital billboards, screens, large screen, small screen. The second thing is, guaranteed and non-guaranteed. So that's very fundamental to this. Direct campaigns, as we think of them, are planned well in advance, and you're promising a certain number of locations and a certain number of impressions, sometimes, not always, but you're promising, hey, we're going to run your ad on these screens or in these places for a fixed amount of time, and it's, some amount of money. So juxtapose that against programmatic. In programmatic, we make inventory available to these buying tools and these programmatic media buyers, and they can make purchasing decisions in essentially real time, and they can buy as much or as little as they want at any time, run a campaign as soon as they buy it, and then optimize and report essentially in real time. So what that means for out-of-home sellers and out-of-home media owners is, I always recommend to people, make your direct sales, right? 3 months in the future, sell as much of that stuff as you can for the highest possible price. And then just understand that some amount of your inventory, as it gets closer to perishing, or as it gets closer to, there not being a bid or not being a buy, you can make that inventory for sale on these programmatic exchanges and make some extra money. So I look at it like any media owner should be utilizing both, direct sales through the existing channels and programmatic tools to sell their inventory.
Is programmatic remnant, and is remnant programmatic?
It's a good question. And I used the term remnant for a lot of years, and I got pushback from media owners in the space of, don't call it remnant. It's perishable, or it's all premium. So it's not, it's like, don't devalue. I should mention just, that it's not just because it's last minute doesn't mean that it's remnant. You can have a conversation with a media buyer about campaigns that are expected to spend into the future. So somebody will approach us and say, hey, I have a client. Here's what they're looking to accomplish in these markets. What do you got for us? And so we'll actually, go through and filter through our own inventory and say, hey, I think grocery stores make sense here. I think gas stations might make sense, or EV charging, et cetera. So you're still doing media planning, and you're thinking about the future. When you package these private marketplace deals together, it'll execute in real time, but there's still real strategic thinking, and there's still, sort of a negotiation that happens. So in a case like that, when let's say a financial services company wants to be near the point of purchase, we'll say, okay, when's your campaign and what's the volume that we can expect? And then that will dictate, how we carve up our inventory as well as the price. So if they want to spend 300,000, maybe I go from a $7 CPM to a $6 CPM for that private marketplace deal before I turn it on for them. And then, as we come closer to campaign start, we believe that they're going to start spending on a certain day. They're going to spend with a certain trajectory to get to that 300,000. And so we'll see if that actually turns out that way. But you sort of plan on your inventory in the future selling direct, as well as packaging these private marketplace deals with known customers who have known campaigns into the future. So in that case, it's definitely not remnant. In fact, it could be sort of premium inventory that's carved out. You can put a higher price on it at certain events in certain hot markets. In the same way that you would price up your mall media inventory in December, you can do that in programmatic too. You can set your price floors a lot higher and then actively package and sell into those future months.
It's in ways it's kind of like having a 1099 salesperson, right? It's gravy. If we find some additional sales through it, then hey, why not? The space was sitting there available. Someone else sold it for me. I'll take that.
And I would say the other thing too is the companies that I know that are doing this really well, one of the tactics that they use is they make their inventory available in the open exchange, and then they read the data. So they see who's putting a bid on the media. And if you're in there every day and you're seeing, okay, this is interesting. There's this, big telecom company is buying these 6 markets. Interesting. I wonder what they're up to, right? Reach out to them. Before they spend $100,000, you could catch them in the first 10 and say, hey, seems like you're interested in this. You can see the creative files that have been approved and are running, so you can have an idea what their strategy is. But go to them and say, hey, what are you trying to accomplish? Is there anything I can do, from a measurement standpoint? Can we add a mobile retargeting campaign to this? Can I further sort of filter through or make some additional inventory available to you to extend that campaign? So there's always this upselling and communication and strategy opportunity. And most importantly, you can say to them, hey, if you're proving something out, if you're testing different creative with different audiences and different markets, and you're figuring out what works. So these guys, when they're buying through the Trade Desk or buying through MediaMath or buying through Amobi, they've got these big analytics packages. They're not spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars without measuring it. So you can just ask them, hey, what are you guys measuring? And what are you finding that's successful for you? And then if they say, hey, we ran all these different creatives and we found out what worked. And now that's an opportunity for me as a seller to say, now do you want to do a big direct campaign on top of that? Take what we learned that proved to be effective. Let's do a big direct sale for next year. And now I just made a $600,000 sale off of a $50,000 remnant last minute programmatic opportunity. So I think that you can use those tactics to learn. And then, oh, by the way, that telecom company that was using the open exchange to try different things that I then sold this big direct campaign to. Now I can take that information and take it to another telecom company or another telecom company and say, this is a tactic that you can try. Instead of, trying to sell them a big campaign direct, you can say, dip your toe in, test some creative, figure out what works. And then when you're ready, give me a call.
Something that I'm conflicted with is around the idea of impressions with programmatic and just out of home in general, really, right? So we know that there's a degree of waste online because of bot traffic, and maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 50%. Who knows, what the real number is? Plus, how much of the targeting really is current or how much of it really is deterministic. So if we think about waste online, like I'm sure it's much more than people would typically bake in. When we think about impressions and programmatic out of home, something I can never quite reconcile is I'm buying 1 million impressions, but I don't know how many plays that is. Share of voice and the relative frequency with which your ad plays, for me, is a big question mark around all of those things. How do you think about that? How do you address that? Is that a concern from advertisers? For me, it's something that's just like the biggest chasm to cross into completely leaning into programmatic.
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's a series of answers and a bunch of different ways to take it. But I think in the first thing I'll say is that it depends who you're talking to. If you're talking to a digital advertiser, share of voice is not something they think of a lot. Screen size and context is not something they think about a lot. They're going to take your audience and impressions figures at face value, and they're going to just say, all right, I'm trying to find these audiences. I've been chasing them around the internet for weeks, and I want to find them in the real world, and I want to deliver some messages to them, right? And they've got their funnels built out, and they know they get an email sign up on a website. They got you, right? You're worth $56.06 on average. Like if they get one, you know what I mean? They have that all modeled out. So they're really just trying to get people to dump into the top of their funnel, or better yet, midway through their funnel. So they look at out of home as a channel for exposure, driving this interest, getting you into these different levels of the funnel where they know how to monetize you. So for the digital buyer, you're not going to talk about share of voice necessarily, or a spot in the loop, or things like that, or how many other advertisers are on that digital bulletin. They just want to know, what's your methodology for the impressions? Where are you getting your data on this audience? And then, report back when it delivers. And that's really it. So in some ways they're a lot easier to work with. But you can also see the flip side of that, where an out-of-home person is going, not every screen is created equal. And there's some big giant screens that create this really wonderful, impactful, experience for folks. And that's got to count for something, right? Like a 20 by 60 has got to resonate more than, a 27-inch screen, or a tiny screen in a taxi, or heaven forbid, a display ad on a mobile device. Like it does, right? It has to, right? And that's an open question. And I think, in some ways I like the digital mentality, which is like, look, if it delivers an audience and I can measure it, why do I care if it's a big screen or a small screen? This thing does great for me. There's $100 million that gets spent through this every year. And that's a little display ad or a pre-roll video. We're talking about, even 27-inch screen, or a 52-inch screen, or a 20 by 60. That's all way better, right, in terms of an ad unit than what digital is working with. But digital has the advantage of being, targeted, contextual, measurable. And right now that's, I would say that out of home has awesome screens. So A+ screens, A+ ad units. And then we just have to work on the data that allows for targeting, addressability, contextual relevance, and measurability. If we can shore up those things, then I think that we'll earn, a lot more than what we currently earn in this space.
You got to go back and find it. At some point, I did a mock-up of how many, it must have been like 1-inch display ads could fit in a billboard. It's like 55 million, right? 55 million, like 500,000 display ad that would fit inside of one 14 by 48 billboard. So as the debate rages on about, are impressions created equal, one could say, well, if that's $10 1,000 for those impressions, but it's times that many individual play. No, there's probably much smarter people than I that can settle that debate. So how do you think of all of these things working together? Like they must all have a place in putting together a campaign or in getting introduced to out of home or as a supplement or a complement to a campaign? How do all these things coexist?
Yeah, I mean, I just look at the way we all move throughout the world, right? In our media consumption habits and the things that we're influenced by. I mean, we all know marketing works. Let's start there. We know marketing works. There's this great sort of trick that I love to do with people of like, all right, Tim, think of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be your favorite movie. Doesn't have to be comedy, any movie that pops to your head. Don't tell me, but think of a second one. Okay, a different one. Okay?
Okay.
What's the movie?
The first one or the second one?
Second one.
Oh, Monsters, Inc.
Monsters, Inc. Now, why did you think of Monsters, Inc.? Right? There's going to be this confluence of reasons around you've got your kids, you did this, 2 weeks ago, you did that. And he said,
totally.
He wants to be that for Halloween.
Yeah, I was playing Monsters the other day with my best friend's little girl.
Okay. So there, you could have chosen any of 10,000 movies that you had thought of, that you've seen or you've heard about or whatever, but for some reason, that association happens to be Monsters, Inc. right now. And I think, as we go through our lives, when I ask you for insurance companies, what do you think?
It's always Geico. Sure.
Allstate, State Farm. Why? Because you've seen it, you've had relationship with it, you're familiar with it. Maybe you've had a good experience, had a bad experience. But all of these things, we don't really know where those associations are coming from. And it's mostly subconscious. That's my point, right? You're pulling the subconscious thing into your conscious and you're saying, I don't know. Geico, I don't know. Good job, Geico advertising. That's what that's what I think of. And I think that it's
a whole lot out of home.
Yeah, tons. Major advertising out of home. Good on you guys. The other one should get on it. But so marketing works, right? And so there's television campaigns because people watch television. There's OTT because people are watching television differently. Mobile, even though the ad units aren't very good, it's just so strong in all those other things, right? They know who you are. They know what your behaviors are. Google Maps will tell you you're going to work because you get into your car at 8:17 every damn morning. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much that these devices know about you. So the ad unit can be terrible, but there's such good data and it's so actionable for advertisers. And so, in a way valuable for everyone. And then when you think about, as we move in these shared spaces, you lose a little bit of context. You lose that one-to-one sort of targetability. When you're in downtown DC or when you're riding on a subway, it's not tailored to you specifically, but it's tailored to you as a set of riders. And so in that way, it has to be just the messaging has to be more generalized, which is good. Because if you're doing mass market stuff and you have a really kind of ubiquitous message that does make sense, if your brief says 18 plus, like out of home's killer, right? And you want to be in a subway and you want to be in these places that see massive high frequency people. But if you have something that's like more contextual, like a spirit brand or something like that, we represent TouchTunes. So obviously we think you're super close to the point of purchase. People are in bars for 90 minutes. They have a lot of dwell time. Go ahead and hit them with the special, hit them with some information about Dos Equis, et cetera, to make them try to pull that lever. And then, if you try it once, you're likely to continue to drink the same thing all night. Like there's a lot of data around these little kind of closed loop networks where you can say, okay, here's an investment in this market. Let's see how it affects people's consumption habits. And then, okay, now that we know you spend $1, you make $1.50, let's see how many times we can do this. And so that last little bit that I talked about of like, for $1, we get $1.50. If we can close the loop at scale and out of home, we'll command so much more attention, so much more revenue, so much more of the pie than we're currently getting. The problem is, in a lot of instances, we're not able to close that loop yet. And I see I see that being, and it went 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. I'm sure everyone was saying the same kind of thing. This attribution thing is the holy grail. We really got to figure it out. And that's still true at scale. Now there's individual, you advertise in a Walmart and you see brand lift. You advertise in a convenience store, you see brand lift or sales lift. Those things are great, but that's not Times Square. That's not on the side of the 405, the big impactful high value stuff that we have. And so there's just a lot there. And until we really are capable of closing the loop at the bigger scales, I'm afraid we're just going to still kind of remain at that 3%, 4%, piece of the pie. But we're working every day to close more of the loops and to get to that bigger scale so that we can assert ourselves a little bit more as an industry.
Yeah, you made me think there is what do we need to do as an industry for all of these things to grow? We've got Geopath going through some changes. We've got OAAA going through some changes. Who should be leading these conversations? It seems like there's a vacuum, obviously, at the top of our industry, and everyone's kind of pulling in their own direction. How do we bring this all together?
So it's a very good question, and it's a nuanced answer, and one that sometimes I get in trouble for being a little bit too honest and challenging the status quo. But I think the answer is we need to be honest as much as we can. And I don't know exactly what happened to Kim Frank and Geopath and what happened during COVID and all that stuff. But, I know that we saw an opportunity as Screenverse when, billboard companies were trying to sell their media in a COVID environment, and they were using the impressions figures that had been derived from 2019 data. And they were saying, this is it. And the media buyers are like, no, it ain't. Right. There's no way it's it.
Everybody's in their house. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And they're all working from home and they're all here.
It was an opportunity for us as an industry to establish some legitimacy and some credibility and say, like, no, you're right. There's nobody on the fucking road. And that's why the impressions are down 90%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Out of home really is measurable. That must mean everything else after that must be true too. It was such a missed opportunity.
And you're that point is brilliant and well said. I mean, loving with people is a good thing to do, and being honest with people and saying, hey, we're down 60% right now. Like, our audiences are down. That's what we're selling, by the way. We're not selling billboards, we're selling audiences. And so, if you say, hey, I mean, and we did, we invested tens of thousands of dollars in data that was 4 days old when we didn't have that much money to invest. You know what I mean? Like, we weren't super ourselves yet, and we just invested in it because we're like, if we're going to try to sell people, screens in grocery stores and convenience stores and pharmacies, there's a narrative there at that point in time to say these are essential businesses and they're delivering audiences. But when you can show it with data that's, again, 4 days old, and you show, hey, this is what it was pre-pandemic, then it went down to this in March, went here in April, and then here's where it is in May. If I'm selling you that inventory based on this, M, the people portion of the CPM, if I'm selling you that, then you're going to trust me, you're going to understand. And as that M goes up, as the traffic goes up in these locations, then you get to make more money, So if you're selling based on CPM, which we chose to do, and you're selling based on actual audience data, as your audience returns, then your numbers get better. You know what I mean? Like, they started out low and it was like, kind of funny to see the money trickle in. Well, as the numbers return, then so does the revenue. And I just think as an industry, and I know why people do it, right? A lot of these companies are public and they have to say a certain thing about, no, it's fine. And they're protecting stock prices and everything. But, I found that if you just level with advertisers and say, hey, a lot of this stuff isn't working right now, let's focus on the stuff that is, and let's let's communicate and measure, and then we'll build and we'll build. And then when malls come back, great. When movie theaters come back, great. When other things come back, great. But when you act like everything's hunky-dory and it isn't, then you sacrifice some goodwill that you can trade on later. So I don't know. Personalities, the geopath and OAAA. I just think find out what's really happening, sell your ass off with that data. And as things get better, then it's going to be easier. You know what I mean? Like, it's just going to be easier. But, you know, not being honest with yourself and not being honest with the buying community it's just short-termism. And, you know, again, I don't knock it, you know, I don't know the specific examples of like who was in the rooms and how close to insolvency they were. And like all these things, those could have all happened, you know, or Geopath, you know, maybe they wanted to slash the numbers 40% and there was a mutiny. I don't know. I really don't know. But I do think that there should be a rating standard for sure. There should be methodologies that are debated and adopted. But at the same time, you know, the silly part is like, you know, we have ratings and Nielsen ratings and Geopath ratings and first party ratings from our media partners. We put them into these systems. The DSP could be trading on something completely different.
Sure.
You know, I don't know what it is. They're buying us. I'm like, I wonder if they're buying it based on our data or based on, you know, the buy side they want to see value that you don't see. Right. They're going to filter through your inventory and say, these guys don't even know what they have.
They're missing it totally.
Yeah. And then they're going to buy that and they're going to arbitrage it, whatever. Like, I don't know, maybe that process of I'll get my data together, my arsenal of data, and I'm going to go charge the hill. And then they've got their arsenal of data and somewhere we've got to meet in the middle and agree on things. Maybe it's just supply and demand, figuring it out is going to work rather than, you know, 20 people sitting in a room at the OAAA saying, this number worked for you guys. This methodology worked for you guys.
Hey, I heard there was an opportunity to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense to bring the buy and sell side together to agree on what should the currency be? How do we agree to these things? Because I'll tell you one thing that's not helping it, and that's changing it every 24 months. Like, I've only been in this for 24 months, and I've probably seen like 3 or 4 different conversations around methodology, how it's measured, who's measuring it, who like mom and dad, everyone's got to make up, and we all got to figure out what we're all agree to and move on with it. So
I like opportunity to see. I mean, conceptually, it makes a ton of sense to me. Like,
makes a ton of sense.
You know, like if I'm a screen, I'm a screen. My whole thing is that I got a zone, right? There's like a cone of space where people can see.
I can't really see my TV from here. I can see it, but I can't really see if there was something on it. Right. This is not an opportunity to see my TV.
But so for the example of me being a screen in the physical world, or your screen in your living room, you know, if there's like an unbelievably breathtaking woman or man that's there, that's naked, who's standing and presenting himself or herself to you, like that little bit is going to catch your eye, and I bet you're going to walk in and
going to wonder what the hell my son is watching. Turn it off, son.
Yeah, you got to get that parental control going. But my point, opportunity to see is like, look, I'm giving you the opportunity, and then if you put a bullshit message that nobody cares, that's not eye catching, that, you know, so the previous, you know, kind of regime and the previous, you know, eyes on, you know, how many people are actually going to see this thing? To me, I always felt like that seems like a creative challenge. That seems like a creative opportunity, right? The screen itself has inherent value, and that's what opportunity to see is. Now, if you put a work of art or something that's very either explicit or entertaining or wonderful or what, like, that's going to draw attention. And so that's the opportunity. And so when you're measuring the media value of a screen, I think it should be based on opportunity to see. And then it's up to us to test different creatives and see what actually is most eye-catching and most interesting for folks. And that's, again, why I would recommend, you know, try a bunch of different things in programmatic, measure, what's actually converting for you, and then take that to the big screen,
Why haven't technologies like AdMobilize or some of these cameras and the eye track, like based on the way that you just described opportunity to see, like I can buy into that. And then I would say like, cool, like put me a camera on top of that screen and let me split test creative so I can see what people actually look at. Why are technologies like that not more adopted? Why have they struggled so much?
I don't know if they're struggling or if they're not. I don't know. My basic take is that, don't buy a car, don't buy a high performance sports car unless you're going to drive it on the track, right?
You better beat
so if you've got
off it.
If you've got, this network that's got all the bells and whistles in it, and you've got this content engine behind it, and you're going to do dynamic content, and you're going to be able to optimize the entire value chain of deploying campaigns and measuring success and changing them and changing creative and being super dynamic, then by all means buy that software and really take it to the nth degree. But not everyone needs that. So the sort of Honda Accord of measurement is mostly what everybody needs. You just need to be able to have a tight enough methodology where there's traffic and it's mobile panels, or it's you set a geofence and you extrapolate based on devices that show up. That's good enough for most networks most of the time. Now, the challenge that I see is when a network that isn't committed to being incredibly dynamic and using all that data to because it's one thing to say 37-year-old female with this expression, but what then? What are you going to do? Are you going to target her next? Or are you going to play an ad in that moment that appeals to her more? If you're not going to do any of that, then what does it matter, right? Your reporting comes back and it's like, hey, you just spent all this money to
look at this sweet chart I got over
here. What are you going to do now? So what I would say for the AdMobilizers of the world is, if a network wants to deploy AdMobilize, then use it. Then really use it. That means dynamic creative. It means capturing information and retargeting, because if there's this 37-year-old female, you get her device and you get her, state of mind. Well, that should inform the next couple messages that come to her along the way. Or else you just, you buy a Ferrari and you park it in your garage and it's like, use it. So I love innovation in the space. I think it's brilliant. What they're doing, but I don't think it's for everyone. And I don't think it's for every network.
It's fair. Well, Adam, I don't know that we've settled any of the debates today, but I think that we have shared a lot of useful information and different ideas to think about. Does programmatic, here, let's leave on this as we'll just strike fear into the hearts of anybody still listening. Does programmatic get rid of the account executive?
Programmatic get rid of the account executive.
Let me inform where I'm asking from. I'm asking from sitting in a local sales office with, a team of account executives who have staked their career on this. They've been selling media in a market for 20, 30 years, right? They're maybe nearing the twilight of their career and they're hearing this programmatic thing, programmatic, and the computers are coming for them. Is any of this technology a threat to the account executive? I guess is maybe a better way to ask it.
I think generally no, because in my experience, the dollars that are flowing into programmatic, we're not coming to that account executive and out-of-home teams in general before. It's some digital money that was sort of earmarked to go into, mobile video pre-roll, et cetera, that we're going out and trying to earn. And by we, I mean the DSPs are, the agencies are, the folks that are developing business along the channel. Now that account executive needs to be working with those channel partners for sure to make sure the Adams Outdoor story is being told throughout, or make sure that, XYZ network, that their story is being told throughout. And then the other thing is that even in these really beautiful systems that exist today, the Vistars and place exchanges, there's always challenges, creative issues, or it's not playing for this or that reason. And what happens, and I think one of the things that out-of-home people do really well is troubleshoot issues that come up, right? Vinyls got shipped to the wrong place, and how do we get, they're logistics people,
sure,
right? And so they've got a lot of strength and power and experience when it comes to like, all right, we gotta solve this problem on the fly, figure out what's going on to get that message up, take that picture and get our POPs done. So that is an underrated skill in programmatic, right? You know, Google is so good and DoubleClick is so good that the delivery challenges, you know, aren't there all the time. Or it will just, you know, if something's down for a week, it's okay. It'll just, the spend will make itself up in the remainder of the campaign. That's the kind of mentality that happens in digital programmatic, you know, but I think one of the things that out-of-home executives do well is if they see something change and there's a problem, they're on it. They're troubleshooting. They're calling the people on down the chain, and they're trying to quarterback that process and make it work. So yeah, it's a new set of technology that you'll need to sort of understand, but you can understand it. You know, it's not a person that's listening to this with 20 years or 30 years of experience selling billboards that doesn't understand. It's just trading that data that was in the spreadsheet, send via the email, update 100 times before you get an IO. You're just inputting that into a system, and it's buying based on that. And once you get that, you know, do the trade desk certification. You know, there's a lot of good resources the DPAA publishes and others publish. Read those things. You'll be surprised. 3 months, you'll be an expert at this stuff. And then it won't be this scary thing, but a tool that you can use to be better and to attract more new revenue. And if you can do it right, man, you can make money while you sleep. So, you know, don't be afraid of this stuff. It's new money. It's a new channel. It's new. It's interesting, but you can figure it out. And I think the things about understanding context, understanding the screens, understanding creative and the impact, I mean, you can bring that to bear. You're still talking to real human beings that are sitting at the other side of that computer. Like, they will listen to you and they will understand what you're saying, and they'll say, okay, so we'll recommend that media over this other media because I get it now. So narrative matters. So I'd encourage everyone to lean in and do it.
That's an exclamation point. I love it. I couldn't agree more. I think that all this technology ultimately empowers the account executive and makes the good ones great and the great ones just completely irreplaceable. So I thought that was a beautiful way to bring it home. Adam Malone, where can folks find you? Where do they connect with you? Give us the Latin long.
Sure. Pretty active on LinkedIn. I think it's Adam Malone as the URL suffix, or just search for me. The company website, screenversemedia.com. If you're a marketer or a designer and you see our website and you throw up a little bit in your mouth, reach out to me and we'll hire you, because we do need to upgrade it in a bunch of different facets in our marketing game. We are hiring a bunch of different positions right now. So careers@screenversemedia.com. Tim, thanks, brother.
Thanks so much for being here, Adam. If you found this helpful, educational, any of those things, please share, follow, do all the things that help the podcast grow. As the podcast grows, the community grows. That is all good stuff for Out of Home. So the subscribe button, I think it's down there in the corner. Make sure to smash that if you're watching on YouTube. And we'll see y'all next time.
I finally came to my senses. I finally got my hand up on the tinted Benz, kid. I see the world clear through my tinted lenses. With the dream and the drive, the possibilities endless. Now print that, send this all the way to Tokyo. Take a trip down south, down to Mexico. Next stop, Shanghai, the world-class trade show. First class all the way, cause that's how we roll. Yeah, call us the rock star businessman. Rockin' shows, we handle business, man. We got our own future in the palm of our hands, cause divided